Hi, everybody. I'm Tracy Swedlow, and this is Televisionation. I'm so glad that you're here. We've got a really great show lined up, and I have the gentleman from Alphonso here with us today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Nice to be here.
Well, to be specific, I think we'll see how this works out in post and where you're laid out. But Ashish Baldua, who's the Chief Growth Officer, go ahead and wave, Ashish.
Hi there.
You are. And we have Raghu Kodige, who is the Chief Product Officer from Alphonso.
Hi, everyone.
And we have some really interesting information coming here in a presentation, a lot of data, because you guys are tracking 15 million devices, right? Connected and smart TV devices. So you've got a lot of interesting observations, which I've previewed, and I can't wait to hear you explain all of that. But first, tell me how you are, where you are, if you're okay. How are you at home?
Yeah, first of all, for all of the viewers who are going to see this, hope everyone is staying safe and, glad to be talking to you through this medium. I'm Raghu Kodige, as Tracy mentioned, Chief Product Officer and co-founder of Alphonso. And I'm doing this from my home. This is just in my backyard. I have a little space that I've turned into my own office so that there's a little fresh air and less kids running around, and I can do these calls. And I know each of you have made those adjustments to find your own space, and looking forward to sharing what we have here. Ashish?
How many kids do you have there in the house?
I have two boys. A teenager and a younger one, and full of energy. So,
well, I don't know how boys are dealing with this issue. With all that energy. My 12-year-old daughter is okay; she's fine with all this. And Ashish, tell me a little bit about your home environment.
Sure. I have 3 kids. I'll start the other way. 3 kids, I asked all of them not to turn on their videos at this point of time to make sure that the internet bandwidth stays, good during this call. But yeah, three kids. It's 2 boys and a girl. I'm in San Jose and, trying to keep safe as everyone else hopefully is. And it's been, quite some experience, I think, kind of going back to, the basics of life and just being home with the family as well and sharing time. And I guess also watching a lot of TV. I know our household is one of the 50 million subscribers that Disney Plus has gotten. So that's one of the way, I guess, that things are being done these days.
Yeah, my daughter is asking, she wants Disney Plus, but I thought, well, she was too young for that. But now I see, there are shows for 12-year-olds out there, especially Frozen.
Yes.
Okay, well, that sounds really great. How's Alphonso, the company? Are you're all distributed, or you were in the same city, or where is everybody?
Yeah, so we've always been a distributed company. So in some sense, we've been well adjusted to this, idea of working remotely or through, doing a lot of work through video conferences and Slack and, every means of communication possible, right? We have offices in California, New York, Chicago, and then India, and then a few other smaller 1 or 2 people offices are present in, UK, Taiwan, and other places. So overall, in many different time zones, and typically we work through, Zoom and Hangouts and, all those other communication methodologies. So we've been okay. What's been surprising for us is how well a lot of our clients have adopted to this, right? Typically in sort of the media industry, there's a lot of in-person meetings, and all of those have stopped, but people have really been flexible in making themselves available through a lot of video calls and phone calls. And I think I really want to thank everybody who is doing that, because I think it helps the whole industry, continue to work, right? This is not, a stay-at-home vacation for all of us. We're trying to do the best under these circumstances. And It's been wonderful to see the support from all our clients who, take these meetings and make accommodations in their homes. Many times we'll see someone taking a call in their bedroom, right? Or there are, kids walking around, but it takes sort of that, I think, that flexibility and courage to do that. And it has been working very well for us.
So for people who are watching and listening who aren't familiar with Alphonso, and I think, our entire audience is, because they're hardcore TV industry people, but we're expanding our reach a lot through this. So give me the short explanation as to what Alphonso does, and so we can understand the data you've collected in context a little bit better, please.
Sure. So Alphonso is a TV data company, and what that means is we understand really what people are watching on TV, whether it's linear TV or OTT, shows versus ads that they may be watching, or even, video games that someone might be playing on their TV. Alphonso understands that and knows about who is watching that. And this is through our technology called Video AI, which is embedded within the smart TVs and other devices in the living room. Tracy, we cover roughly around 15 million households. So the data is, very well representative of the entire nation. And through that data, we, have a few different products that we work with. One is our, insights and analytics product, which allows any brand that is spending significant amount of money on TV, whether it's national or local or OTT, to know how that is working, right? TV typically has not been very well measured, but our data allows us to know, who's watching their commercials and what subsequent actions they take. In fact, some of those will be in the presentation that we share, like really how we are using the data. And then the second way is, we also have a TV retargeting business where, using this data, people can retarget audiences on mobile, desktop, CTV, so on. It allows for, extending the reach and frequency from television to another device. So, roughly those two ways are how, Alphonso works with the industry.
I also meant to ask, and then let's go into the presentation. You said your brands are being very flexible, your customers. Can you tell me a little bit about, are they concerned? Are they retooling? Are they being innovative? How are you advising them? Like what percentage of people you think are bouncing back and able to take advantage of not only the data you're providing, but really do something with it?
Yeah, no, I think obviously everyone, I think the first week or so, we saw people were just concerned more than anything else. It was almost like, hey, let me worry about, my company, our homes, that kind of mentality, right? And we did see sort of things being paused, or people saying, let's talk back next week. And obviously we understand that. But the flexibility we have seen is, within a week, people sort of retooled themselves to sort of this idea of, hey, you're not putting off any meetings for when we come back. It's business as usual. So whatever meetings were in place beforehand, it just changed very quickly to, instead of being in person, to video calls or phone calls. And then the rest of the discussions continue to be almost same as before, right? And the questions that we are getting are a lot around, given the changes in viewership, whether it is, more TV being watched or different types of, shows being watched, or cancellations happening to sporting events, how should we react, right? What should we do differently? And what else is everybody else doing? I think one thing which is, which people sort of forget is we all feel like we are in silos now. Earlier, when we were going to an office, you were still talking to people within your own office, but you felt a sense of connection. But I think being alone, we always feel like we are somewhat isolated. So people are trying to ask more questions around, what is everybody else in the industry doing? Are there other people doing anything differently? So I think, Ashish, you'll probably agree, right? Like 50% of the questions we get are, what are others doing? Can you share that? And that's really why, we started actually our own webinar series once a week, where it's called Wednesday Webinars. We really just talk about what is everybody doing, what questions are we getting overall from the industry, and how, potentially we can share that and sort of, hey, we are here to help you. So please reach out and tell us what you want. Ashish, I
No,
don't know if you want to add anything
no,
to
yeah.
that.
I think the only thing I would add is seeing the phases, like you said, probably initially it was almost like a little bit of a shock, like of phase. The first phase was that. The second phase was we started getting questions about just overall TV watching behavior, what's changing, what's happening. I think, and then over time, people have started asking very specific questions and requests. And to Raghu's point about which fall in two bucket, which is what is my competition or what are other people in the industry doing that we can learn from, and then very specific request from them. Okay, what are we doing? What are we doing? Should we be buying inventory in a particular spot or not? How does my OTT versus linear compare given changes, and how do we adapt? So I think people have really, I would say people have very quickly adapted, both from a personal standpoint of working in this mode, as well as from what they should be doing from a marketing and advertising perspective.
Well, I'm hoping that Televisionation is helping people do that. So, all right, sounds good. Let's go into presentation, shall we?
Sure.
I can click on, or there we go. There we go.
All right. So I'll kick it off, Raghu, first.
Sure.
But I mean, almost continuing what I was talking about, this presentation is trying to cover, in my mind, the change that we are seeing. And that's the one word that I would describe this presentation, right? It's about the change and how one can adapt to the changes. So in terms of changes, we're seeing consumers are changing their behavior in terms of their TV watching habits. We're seeing networks changing their programming with sports programming, going away, and other programmings in the future also being in question. The brands and agencies obviously, are changing their messaging and the creatives that they're going after and going out with. And then finally, taking all that into account, the brands and agencies are saying, okay, what should I be doing specifically? What more changes should I be doing in terms of where I buy the inventory and so on? So that's basically what this presentation is trying to cover, and hopefully we can share and shed some light and information on all those various aspects of change across the board. And with that, I think the first thing, like I said, we want to talk about is the change in the TV watching behavior. And there you go, Raghu, if you want to kind of kick us off on that front.
Yeah. I think what I said. We're all staying at home, which means we are watching more TV. I think we are seeing more of a co-viewing behavior. TV in the last few years, I felt like everyone was watching whatever they wanted, and I think there's a little more of shared viewing that's also happening. And then Ashish, if you go to the next slide, I think we can look at sort of the general patterns that we are seeing across cable and broadcast. So what this slide shows here, you're seeing sort of two squiggly lines here. The orange is broadcast viewing and how it has changed since the beginning of the year. So you'll see a couple of peaks, right, which is around Super Bowl in February. There's a peak there, and then it's been fairly steady. But the blue line, which is the cable news, has kind of exploded in viewership, right? And there are few milestones there, specifically when you started seeing this huge jump. The first sort of jump in early March is the more related to political landscape, because there was a Super Tuesday Democratic primary. But then right after that, I think the COVID announcement started coming in. And then the next big peak that you see, or big milestone you see, is when US declared national emergency, right? So this is sort of a good indicator of how over time you're seeing people really spending more time watching cable news, obviously trying to consume all the news around coronavirus. And then broadcast even with the loss of sports programming, which also happened, sort of in early March, being resilient with sort of other programming, prime time or even local news and others covering for some of those major losses, and still sort of holding on to its viewership that we've seen throughout the year. So this is something that we've been refreshing on a weekly basis. Obviously, people are interested in knowing, how, what else, or what do these sort of increases signify. So we provide more deep dives into that as well. So we can go into the next slide. We can look at some other patterns we are seeing. This one specifically talks about OTT viewing. So the previous slide was more linear TV, but if you look at OTT, same thing, right? So, it's almost like a sudden takeoff there, right? As soon as sort of the COVID lockdown started being announced in various states, people are turning towards OTT streaming as a way to, engage themselves in this time period. So again, I think we can all relate to this ourselves. Yeah, Ashish, go ahead. You had a comment there, I think.
No. I just, for the audio listeners, if we went back to the slide, I just wanted to make sure, right, that
good point.
What we are seeing from an OTT front is about a 25% increase in viewership, right? And that continues to be strong. And Raghu, on your previous slides, what you had said was basically broadcast is keeping steady or holding fort, so to speak, right? In spite of losing sports programming. And then finally, cable news is the one that really, if you were seeing the chart, it's showing a jump in viewership anywhere from 50 to 70%. So just wanted to summarize that.
Do you have,
great point.
I'd be curious about the OTT platforms that you're discussing, or the content offerings. I'd be curious to see this broken out in greater detail.
Yeah, we are looking into some of those as well. I mean, in general, we have seen increases, Tracy, across all of them. I wouldn't really say there's one or two that has jumped out. So, obviously they're all proportional to their, how, Netflix one is obviously a lot more popular than some other services, right? But we are seeing both across the ad-supported as well as the subscription-driven OTT services. So huge gains by both those platforms. And then I also remember reading QB or someone announced that they saw a similar 22% increase in the number of in viewership as well in March compared to January. So there's, I think, an independent outside data as well that's similarly, tracking similar trends is what we're seeing.
I'd also be interested in short form versus long form versus, YouTube videos, middle, are people watching, things in short bursts or not? I mean, Quibi, completely is launching in this weird environment. So it'd be interesting to see if they're able to grow in that environment, or if it's a sort of a flat, launch, or, are people watching longer format movies and things like that? Okay. Shall I go to the next slide?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
And yeah, so I think people have asked us many of these questions, which is, hey, are the increases uniform? Is prime time still the highest viewership? What are those trends that you're seeing? So this particular one, what it shows is, for every hour in the day, it compares to previous levels and says whether it has increased or not. So the 100 is sort of the previous average. And if it's more than that, that means there is, increase in viewership at that hour, right? So what you'll see is sort of the late night hours, there is viewership has gone down. And this is also the period when all of the late night shows were taking a break. Right now, they're actually all, again, broadcasting from their homes, but for a brief period there, it was just reruns. There wasn't any live shows being done. So that could explain sort of the orange here is broadcast, the blue is cable. So cable continues to have, almost same levels as before, but broadcast sort of had gone down in that period. And then you see sort of broadcast coming back up, 7 o'clock, everybody tuning into their local news. So or Good Morning America, all of these shows. So you're seeing that being the highest. And sort of then cable news is the one that has seen huge gains all throughout the day. So literally, probably people are leaving, their TVs on CNN or other networks, and that continues to kind of give an increased viewership all throughout the day.
I mean, when I was a kid, when I was a kid, my parents had the TV on all day on CNN or whatever news it was. So that's all that was on. It's interesting. I'd be kind of curious to see how TV viewing by age perhaps influences household numbers here, because you have all these kids, at home watching children's programming, watching,
Right.
or the parents watching the news. Like, that would actually be interesting, because a lot of these kids have online schooling, and it's interesting if maybe their parents are watching in the middle of the afternoon to de-stress, or I don't know.
Right,
Raghu,
right.
we had some more insights into family shows and programs,
Right.
right?
We looked at all the family networks, and the way we classified family networks is, we took all the sort of the kids-oriented networks, right? Nickelodeon, Disney, so on, as well as added any network which has, predominantly movies in them, right? Or at least, few different movies throughout the day, your AMCs, those kind of networks. And there was about 20-25% increase in both the new viewers watching those, as well as the amount of TV being consumed per household. So we are seeing, I think, outside of news, people were asking us what else are people watching. So those were some of the trends that we saw. News, obviously, 40-70% increase. OTT, 20-25% increase. Then sort of, if you look at genres, the sort of the family networks is seeing that increase, which again, I made a comment earlier. I think there's probably a lot of co-viewing happening. People are probably sitting together and watching some of these shows with their kids or, partner and so on. So we are seeing some of those more family type of networks get more viewership as well.
But your brands, are you think they're going to be able to react quickly according to this data? Because this is really going to transform their the plans they had put in place before this, right? That's going to put pressure on them to.
We have a few more slides. I think we can go into that, and it will tell you how people are reacting and what types of questions they're coming with. We can cover this actually real quick as well. This has been very interesting. What are brands already doing on TV? That's what we started looking at, right? Are they keeping their creatives? Are they changing? And what we saw was, a lot of brands are being very sensitive to the current circumstances, and their creatives are starting to reflect that, right? Either in the message being about solidarity with their customers, saying, hey, we are here for you, or talking about how they've changed their service to, be more respectful for the social distancing, or, sort of the shutdowns and so on, and lockdowns in place. Or they're simply, sort of using this as a way to reach out and still be relevant. So like here, a good example, Verizon, very simple, low cost sort of production probably, but it's very, authentic and straightforward. Their engineers talking about what they're doing, how they're, helping the communities they serve to still get all the services without any failures, right? So that's all this creative is. The next one, if you go to the next couple of slides, here's a good example from, auto industry, right? Obviously, people are not going to dealerships and buying cars at this point, but Ford put out this really nice creative about how throughout all the difficult circumstances, they've been part of America's, American life, right? So from the world wars to hurricanes, they've always been there to help in some way or the other. So I thought it was a really beautiful creative that they did. If you go to the next one, so this is again, a great way for Popeyes, right, to say that, hey, we are open. We are still serving our customers, and they sort of use this iPhone or a mobile video format to talk about how they're serving, how they're being careful, and they're open. The message is we are open and we are functioning. So A few, examples like this. I think this is something that, every week we try to highlight to our customers and say, hey, here are many different ways you can do. I think, Ashish, I remember you had a great example from the hotel industry, right?
Yep. No, it's a really, in my mind, authentic, and bold example where hotels.com, their ad was just stay home, right? Which is,
Wow.
which for a marketer, right, to do is, I think, is quite a bold step. But they've been, they just want to continue to be in the minds of people. They want to be a brand that is looks for the welfare of their customers in good times, and I guess in not so good times. So I thought that was really bold, right? And I think in general across the board, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just keeping visible and being, part of the community of thought.
Right.
Yep.
Shall I
Yeah.
go to the next slide?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Media.
Yeah, so I think you were asking how are people reacting. So I'll let Ashish sort of walk through some of these things. But we are seeing both networks and brands obviously start to react to this sort of data and making changes to either their programming or their advertising strategy. So Ashish, do you want to explain sort of the programming side and how things are changing?
No, absolutely right. This slide is trying to cover how networks are adapting to the change. And I would largely put this in two buckets. The first bucket is, and as you can imagine, if you were at the network, is all right, I don't have my live sports programs to run. What can I do? And what we saw very quickly was they started doing reruns of the previous tournaments, right? Like, I guess the first example here is the March rerun of the PGA tournaments. And what you see is they're getting viewership, which obviously is not comparable to what they would see in a live programming, but they're at least able to get anywhere, in the high 30s to 40% viewership for even the reruns. So that's the first change that we are seeing, and that was the more immediate change. And then we've also started seeing networks adapt in terms of what kind of new programming they can bring to their audience. And I would say eNASCAR, which is the last example on the slide, is, in my mind at least, a great example
This one?
of. No. Just it's the last example on the previous slide, right? Which
Okay.
says the iRacing event, which was wherein they did not do obviously a live event, but it was basically drivers competing from home, announcers announcing like a real race. Fox Broadcasting, I believe, was broadcasting it, and then they also put, and nobody gets hurt. So they've been
I think
experimenting
that's
with that.
great. That's really great.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been speaking to various D2C broadcasters who, or programming creators who are definitely investing in talking to the athletes and various people in their homes and seeing what their lives are like and creating content somehow between people who have the common interest but living in their homes. So I think that's great innovation. I'm surprised why people and brands don't try to find interesting things to do, like create a second screen app or, trivia contests and things like that you can do online on a website while you're watching, reruns and things like that. You'd think they would launch those kinds of things, and maybe they are. If you hear about it, let me know.
No, absolutely. I think you're very right, right? There's programming, which is what kind of programming can now be done while people are still at home, whether in this case it's the drivers or it's the actors. And then I think I love your point in terms of bringing interactivity to this kind of programming, which we've already seen a trend, right, happening in terms of users interacting with the programming itself. And I think we are probably going to see more of that, and maybe a faster kind of adaptation of that kind of programming. So
Tracy, I came
absolutely.
across this really wonderful clip last week. Someone had forwarded to me of the entire cast of Hamilton,
I
singing
saw
through a
that.
Zoom call, right? So
Well,
yeah, I mean, there's super
that was
fun.
on the John Krasinski's show
Yes,
called Some Good News. He invited.
yeah, some good news. Yeah. So he's, obviously he's turned this into a really cool thing, right? And a lot of people are loving it. So yeah, I think more kind of these formats have to emerge for people to do things differently, I think, in this time.
I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see more innovation. Okay, so the next slide here was interesting because I've been talking to various people. Yeah, like where are the sports audiences going? And here you have a nice slide, right? This
Yep.
is a fascinating slide because that's the most valuable audience, right? I think. So,
Yes. So yeah, no, keep going.
well, just that. I'm glad you have this kind of detail. Can you tell me a little bit
Yes.
more about it, please?
Absolutely, right? So I think the context going back to the initial part of our conversation is first question that we started hearing, one of the first few questions that we started hearing from our brands and agencies was, hey, we had budget allocated to our sports programming, and now with those not happening, what should we be doing? Can we immediately take some action? So this is a sample report that you see here, which is answering that question, which is, all right, if you were thinking about running or you had plans of running in the Masters tournament, then consider advertising on the American Idol, or consider, on the Today Show or the Forensic Files, right? And this is where you can find a majority of the same audience or the consumers also tuning in, so that you're still able to reach them.
I'm
And
thinking they all feel very fortunate that they can see these things in context like this. This is a great opportunity. It's like a petri dish or a crucible where you can really, see what people are doing, at other times. Anyway, go ahead.
no, absolutely right. And this slide is actually just going into one level of detail, but literally, if you were thinking of advertising in a specific sports vertical, what exactly are those people watching and what percentage, right? So that's the beauty of having all the data, and bringing that power back to the brands and the agencies so that they can make very informed decision on almost a real-time basis and move their dollars around, right? So we've been seeing that, and I think this is an example of a report again that we've been producing on a weekly basis, because while this is one snapshot that you see, obviously what's happening, as we just discussed a few minutes back, is the programming itself is changing. There's reruns happening. There's new kinds of the eNASCAR like programs are coming up. So obviously, uh, the brands and the agencies want to know what are the opportunities for them that they can reach the same audience segment.
I'm going to quickly move our faces up so people can
Yep.
see the brands at the very bottom left. Just quickly, as you can see, The Office. Look at that. My daughter is obsessed with The Office, but she's not a sports watcher. But there you can see Bar Rescue. Rescue. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
no, there are some obvious ones, and then there's some which you would be like, hey, I would not have thought about advertising during those show as a substitute for what I'm doing. But it's great to
Interesting.
provide that data and insights.
Okay. I'm going to go to the next slide.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. I will move our faces back down the corner. Okay.
Right. So, the next trend that we are seeing, and this is almost stating the obvious, is there's a huge migration in terms of how consumers are interacting with the brands. And this is a slide that we picked up from our partner Place IQ, which is showing what's happening to consumer visits to retailers and brands who have an offline presence, right? And What you see here, again, it's almost obvious, is the general out-of-home visits have declined a lot, more than 50%, whereas the essential business visits have gone down by about 30%, right? And what we were discussing actually in our last webinar with Anne was the more consumers are staying in home, they're now interacting with the brands in two ways. Either they're going and doing their research online in terms of, hey, here's what I think I should be putting in my shopping cart, right? And then when I go into the store, I'm gonna reduce my visit to the stores, but when I go in, I know exactly what I want to buy, right? And then the second thing, obviously, is people then doing more shopping online as well. And what you see is on this chart is from Comcast, which shows increases in terms of people's internet usage and right overall. But what Alphonso has seen, given Alphonso works with a lot of brands, is just website visits to the brands have increased a lot in the past few.
I'm ordering from websites that are all over the country, not just from my local grocery, because there are delays and shortages. I'm ordering from small, companies that are offering specialty flours, yeast, because there's a lot of baking going on. You know how that is, right? I found a sources for yeast. So contact me if you need to know. But anyway,
That's funny that you mentioned the more baking happening, because yes, I have an 11-year-old daughter, and that's exactly what she is doing as well.
I know.
Lots of baking.
My daughter every day she wants a baking project over here.
Yeah. But Tracy, I think that the interesting thing there from an advertiser standpoint is they are actually, first they love the fact that there is still business coming to them instead of through offline. Some of it is coming to online, but they don't know who those users are, because many of them are brand new users. They don't really understand sort of what their TV watching habits may be, or what do they consume online, so they can try reaching more of those sort of people, right, through advertisements and so on. So, not only do they not know what shows to advertise on TV anymore, because consumption patterns have changed so much, they also don't understand their own customers very well. Right. So I think that's really, what Ashish and our team has been doing, is sort of taking those two data points and saying, hey, tell us about your customers, or help us, understand your customer by sort of, putting a pixel in your website, things like that, or you give us your, CRM data. And then since we understand what changes have been happening on the TV programming side, let's help you understand where you should advertise. Right. So Ashish, you want to talk about that?
No, if we go to the next slide.
Okay.
Yep. So exactly what Raghu said, right? Brands are seeing new customers to their website, and what they want to know is, if I want to understand what these new customers, obviously also including my existing customers or past customers, what are they now watching on TV, right? Because there's two kind of changes: a change in the user base, which is new customers, and then there's change in the programming itself. So in that new world, I want to understand, where can I find users like this, and what are they watching on TV? And that is helping them decide in the coming weeks where they should be buying on TV, right? So we have this product or report, which is called media planning, which takes this user segment that the brand is interested in. Again, it could be their website visitors, it could be their most profitable consumers or customers that they're seeing. And then what this report tells them is, I'll just take this as an example, where this report is saying this user segment tends to watch Fox Business daytime at a view index of 148, which is basically saying that they tend to watch Fox Business daytime 48% more than the average consumer, right? And hence, this is a kind of a inventory, if you will, that you might want to consider buying your media on, right? So what this report will give you is it will list the network day parts. It will give you how much where are that user segment hanging out more on TV. It also gives you what we call a view share, which is basically saying how much of the viewing time is spent on that given network and day part, so that if brands want a higher reach, they can take that factor into consideration, or if their goal is simply to go after where their audience is hanging out the most, then they can obviously go with the view index, but they have the ability to combine both of those factors while making the decision.
Are you guys tracking? I don't think you are, but are you importing social media data in any of this or not? You staying away from that?
Yeah, we are not really doing anything with social media. I think OTT and TV are the two we track the most. So if a brand is buying on OTT, just like how you're seeing here, networks and day parts, we also track, which OTT streaming, AWOD services they are buying ads on and how they're helping them and, things like that.
Okay. Is there another slide after that?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll just keep continuing. Just in the same trend, the previous slide showed basically what network and day part to find that audience. And this slide is just a continuation of the same report, which says, oh, here are the sports, the kind of show genres that you might want to consider when you're thinking about where to reach your audience. So here are the specific shows that you see in the right-hand side corner that you might want to consider buying your inventory on. And then I'll just quickly go to the next slide as well. This actually shows it by the day of week and the time of day. And this basically the green or the shade of green is showing you how much they over-index in a specific time slot. And the red is showing how much they under-index, right? So combine all those charts together and that analysis, right? A brand can make a very informed decision in terms of which network day parts they want to buy the inventory on, or which shows or which time of the day is most appropriate and going to maximize their ad buys.
So, I mean, a brand can say if my budget is limited and I know, especially now that there is more daytime viewing happening, and if the networks haven't changed the rates on those, and if they tend to be cheaper than prime time, right? This is a great way for them to get to the same audience at a lower cost almost. So those are, I think, various ways that people are starting to use this data.
It's interesting you bring up daytime pricing, because you'd think if the networks realize that viewership is growing daytime right now, they would be retooling their prices, maybe?
So we have been asking that. I mean, obviously, we don't have all the data from every network or brand, but what we are hearing is the rates haven't really changed. There is pressure on the networks because there are certain categories that have reduced their spend on TV right now, right? Obviously, travel has been a big impact. So there is pressure in that sense, right? So even though more inventory is available, there are brands that are pausing their campaigns or slowing down their spend on TV. So that is sort of causing downward pressure on pricing as well. So I think overall, prices have been somewhat same or maybe even trending slightly lower than before.
I know that that Linda Yaccarino, at NBC is doing a lot of reimagining about how to keep her brands happy and give them production support or assets, or she's trying to figure out ways to make the whole advertising experience a more pleasant one in this environment.
I absolutely. I think the networks realize, right, that they need to be supportive of their clients' needs. So it's not just a matter of we have more viewership, let's increase prices. I think they're happy if the advertisers continue to, invest at the same levels as before, or even helping them find new ways to engage with the content that is being produced. So I mean, it's being done in a very collaborative manner. It's what we feel, right, overall, between the sort of the buyers and the sellers here.
Interesting. Is there another slide? I can't remember.
Yep, no, absolutely.
Okay.
So just in terms of the questions that were being asked, as we showed earlier, right, linear TV consumption is increasing, OTT linear consumption is increasing. People might be changing their watching habits, so to speak, like Raghu said, right, more co-viewing happening in one segment versus another. So the other questions that we're hearing a lot in terms of from brands is, hey, I want to understand the interplay between my linear TV as well as OTT, right? The one of the reasons before this, or primary reasons that brands would go after OTT purchasing was two. One was better targeting, and the second was getting unduplicated reach, right? Tell me, a way to get to people whom I can't reach on linear TV. So what we are hearing from brands is, hey, can you please generate this report? Or what you see in this report is the circle on the left is saying, here's what your reach was on linear TV. The smaller circle on the right is the reach on OTT. And then the intersection is the duplicated reach, right? And from at least most brands' perspective, what they're looking for is they're looking for their OTT to have unduplicated reach. So now with the change, it's almost, they had some stable state earlier or an understanding, but now these kind of reports are being asked on a weekly basis so that they can quickly adapt to their buying strategy on linear versus OTT.
You're going to have to be flexible.
Yeah, no, I think, and we are definitely seeing that with, I would say, most brands, at least that Alphonso works with, that the brands are being flexible and quickly changing, looking at the data and making decisions, and then taking a decision and then making those change in the real world.
Yeah. This is probably just one other slide, so we can quickly cover that, right? So I think the other thing that we did was just to see if there is correlation between sort of increase in viewership at a state level and the number of COVID cases being reported there. So those orange circles you see are all COVID case concentration. In California, it's around, Southern California and Northern California, right? You'll see all the big circles around New York. And if you see the color behind it, those are the TV viewing increases that we are seeing. So linear TV, we are definitely seeing increases in, California, Nevada, some of the East Coast states as well. And if you go to the next slide, it shows sort of the OTT consumption in a similar fashion. So sorry, if you go back one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, no, sorry, the next one. Yeah. So this is same concept, but looking at concentration of OTT consumption as well. So rather than looking at nationwide as one block, if you look at where those increases are coming from, again, this is useful data. I think not just the fact that it is correlated with COVID, but as advertisers are looking at, hey, where should I invest in terms of my dollar amount, right? If there are more OTT viewers happening in, say, Texas or California, they know that they should probably advertise more there on OTT, and in other places stick to, digital or social or TV as a way to reach users. So this is why we think this reporting is pretty important as well.
I mean, you can just see the cultures of the various states, in the Northwest, even though there's all that the COVID stuff, there are a lot of very outdoorsy people right up there. So
right,
that's why they're not as much. Okay. It's an interesting cultural map as well as a map of its own time. Interesting.
Yeah, we were joking about how law enforcement can look at this and see where people are taking their advice and staying at home versus going out in spite of the lockdown. So there's definitely that aspect to it as well.
Okay, interesting. Although I'd say in Florida, they've just only recently, right, got a hold of those people on the beaches. So maybe they're all
Right.
watching TV intensively right now. Okay.
Yeah, I think it has a senior population, so there are probably people staying and listening to those, while there are some others who are
Tourists.
not listening, tourists and spring break travelers not listening to it as well, right? So yeah, it's a good data set here to look at.
Well, I think actually we have gone way over time, but the data was so interesting and the conversation was interesting. So I think we can stop the presentation, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's
Okay,
fair.
thank you. This was a really great session to get really down into the nitty gritty of what's happening. So much to know. I'm really going to be interested to see what data you collect. Will you be collecting these kinds of things going forward? I'm assuming you will be, right? It's
Yeah,
your
we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we continuously, like I said, the concept of collecting this really came from customers requesting one, their own questions, but also asking us what are others doing in the industry. So we decided to convert this into an ongoing thing. Every Wednesday we sort of release this, and we spend probably half an hour talking to people through our webinars as well as putting out reports. So yeah, if you are interested, anybody in the audience, please look forward to having you as well in those webinars and looking at our presentation.
And you can go to alphonso.tv to check out what they're doing. Do you have your webinars listed here? Let's see.
Yeah, we should have that listed. Otherwise, I'm sure our CMO, who might be listening to this, will make sure it's up there.
Hi, Alan. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate this. Looking forward to hearing from you more in the future. Tap into your expertise and the data that you're able to produce. Thank you
It's
so
been a great
much.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Of course,
thank you.
thank you. Of course, that is Ashish. Wave again. Ashish Baldua, who's the Chief Growth Officer, and Raghu Kodige. Kodige.
Yes, Raghu Kodige.
It sounds like some kind of code name for a James Bond character or something.
I wish.
Chief Product Officer of Alphonso, Alphonso.tv. Thank you so much. And this is Tracy Swedlow, host of Televisionation and co-producer of the TV of Tomorrow show. Look forward to announcements coming out soon. Thanks so much. Take care. Stay healthy. Thanks. Bye.